Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are having a fantastic day. This is Julian, and I want to give you guys a little update on what I have going on here. So, in my last video, I showed you guys me harvesting a beautiful blue oyster cluster off of my buckets filled with straw. And I also give you guys a detailed explanation along with some other tips about growing in buckets. So what I wanted to show you is what you can do with your spent mushroom substrate after you're done growing mushrooms out of your buckets. So usually I will take out all of my spent mushroom substrate after the first flush of mushrooms out of the bucket, because I don't think it's necessarily worth it to have my buckets stick around for any second or third flushes. I feel as I can utilize it better by adding brand new pasteurized straw with some spawn. So there's usually two things that I'll do with my spent mushroom substrate, and that is either I'll put it in the compost pile along with all of the other vegetable scraps and all the other good stuff that we compost around the house, and let that break down over time, and then eventually I'll add it to the garden. Or we have this little mushroom pile, spent mushroom substrate pile in the corner of the yard where there's not enough sun for any plants to grow here, so it's a perfect amount of shade for mushrooms to grow. So I'll show you guys this little pile I have going on. So here's a little raised bed that I have filled with all of my spent mushroom compost, and if you guys look closely, you can see some oyster mushrooms fruiting directly from the pile. See a little pin right there. Also another pin right there. It looks like some slug got to it or some sort of insect. And they're just all over this pile. You can see there's some right there. All over this pile. And it's all types of oyster mushrooms that I have grown in here. So these should be pearl oysters. You can see how they're more resemblant to gray. And if you come over to the other side of the pile, you can see how these are much darker. These mushrooms are a lot darker, so these are more than likely going to be blue oysters growing here. So this is a good way to utilize your spent mushroom substrate after you're done using them in buckets. You know, all I did was put this pile over here in this little section and just let it sit. And this fruited from just the natural humidity and the rainfall we've been having lately. I really didn't even water this pile. Although if I did water this pile, it would have a lot of mushrooms, way more than what's growing already. So that's what I'll end up doing, is I'll end up watering this more often because you'll get more mushrooms. So like I said, this is a great way to utilize your spent mushroom substrate. You know, you can get mushrooms without even doing anything. You know, all I did was put it on here and it's just doing what it does. Fruits mushrooms, and after it's done fruiting mushrooms, I'll end up moving this to the compost pile when this pile gets a little bit too big for me to add any more spent mushroom substrate. So if you're ever wondering on what do I do with my leftover straw in my, my buckets or my mushroom bag, well, this is what you can do. That you can put it in a shady part of your yard and keep it moist, and it'll fruit more mushrooms for you. And if you don't have a very shady spot in your yard, what you can always do is you can add brand new straw on top of your patch, so you have some sort of barrier from direct sunlight. So instead of the myceliated straw taking on the sun directly, you can put wood chips or more straw on top of your myceliated straw, and it'll help protect the mycelium from the sunlight, because if it dries out, it's not going to produce any mushrooms at all. The mycelium will actually recede. So awesome, you can get mushrooms from doing nothing. and they're absolutely gorgeous. Before I added my spent mushroom substrate, I turned everything inside of my composting pile so I could get everything aerated and moved around inside. Afterwards, I put all of my spent mushroom substrate on top, lightly patting it down, and this will also help any odor if you have any odor coming off of your compost pile. A compost pile is composed of greens and browns, nitrogen and carbon, and straw is carbon mixed with the mycelium, so it will help any odor problems within your compost pile. I leave my pile like this so I can have mushrooms fruiting from the straw in maybe a few days. So what I'll do is I'll put the lid on top of my compost pile and I will leave it be and check back on it a couple days later. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, please share and hit the like button. If you have any recommendations or any comments, leave them down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I hope everyone has a beautiful day. Stay safe out there, everybody.